So I am Ayonfeoluwa. I am the Community Engagement Manager for OmicsLogic Africa Engagement as a whole, and I am a practicing molecular biologist and geneticist. I am a postgraduate of bioinformatics in the Institute of Cytology and Genetics in Novosibirsk, Russia. So lovely to actually have us here. So going straight to the talk, I would love to start by saying that despite the poor capacity development for genomics research in Africa and the effort to empower African scientists to get involved in genomic research, particularly those research that involve African populations. We had consortium coming up, the likes of Human Hereditary and Health in Africa, the H3 Africa Consortium. Then we had other initiative that actually came up, such that we could have databases and co. I would love to throw out some questions in a bit. Here in Africa, before the year 2010, bioinformatics and genomics training was largely done by small groups at very few institutions, and they heavily relied on visiting experts in Europe and America, and some of our African experts had to go to Europe and America to get this experience firsthand. However, we have actually seen how the effort to change this has actually surged so far. We saw the African Society of Human Genomics rising up. We saw the Human Hereditary and Health Consortium in Africa. We saw them also coming up in 2011, gearing towards empowering the Africa that actually have the bioinformatics education, the African researchers that are properly trained, and the African researchers that could actually engage proper bioinformatics research in Africa. So fast forward to today, we also understand that individuals that do not have access to formal graduate trainings at these big universities like we used to know, we understand that there are actually some challenges that the present day researchers actually experience. So I would love to call on Dr. Francis. Dr. Francis, I would love to ask from you. So far, so good. I remember that recently you had a training in bioinformatics in your country, and you tried as much as possible, and in your institution you tried as much as possible to work towards bioinformatics training. Can you just share with us the challenges that you actually met during this training, and what were actually the constraint? What was the success you were able to have?
So thank you, Mr. Alabetito. Thank you to all the panelists, and it's a very great pleasure to be amongst you this evening and to discuss about the challenges of bioinformatics in Africa. And thank you also for introducing that great workshop that we recently organized in January 2022 at the Biotechnology Center of the University of the Yaoundé 1. And talking about the challenges and even the success of that training, I will start by saying that talking about bioinformatics in Africa today is no more a challenging talk. It's no more a tricky aspect, because it's something that people are getting involved. And the interest has been also increased, as you just introduced from your initial speech. And regarding that special training, it was a little bit striking because it was a first count of such training to be organized in our institution. And we even went too far by training people on NGS, which is a very, very new aspect in the research domain in Cameroon. So definitely, having people of a very good background to get involved in such training was a very great challenge. You have people from different backgrounds, people who have never worked on molecular biology and who want to get involved into bioinformatics. You have biologists, you have engineers, you have. But definitely the first challenge was to get them, to bring them together, or to try to have people with the same background in order to ascertain that at least we move together during the training. And this was achieved because we mainly focus on those who at least has a good background in molecular biology, even if they are going to work on bioinformatics and they don't yet have bioinformatics background. At least we are certain that they can have a very good background in molecular biology, knowing that if they are acquainted with biological data, it will be easy to talk with them about those data and how to handle those data. And we finally got something very interesting from those that we selected, because the final number of participants selected for that workshop was 20. And I can say that yes, the workshop was not to bring them or to build them as experts of bioinformatics, but the workshop was just to get them acquainted with the introductory knowledge of bioinformatics. And I think the goal was set. But as soon as you run a such training, and as soon as you introduce people to a new discipline, you should ascertain that they continue building that skill to be able to have the final required skill that you plan before you are training. And that's why during that workshop, we bring in PanBio or OmicsLogic to be sure that immediately after the training, those participants will have other platforms, other learning platforms, other windows where they could be able to continue getting much training about bioinformatics. So definitely it was a very good experience, and we really need such experience again. We need such training again in Africa and in Cameroon in particular, to get other involved, to introduce other into the discipline of bioinformatics.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Francis. Yeah, that was so detailed, because you were with the, I mean, you were from your first-hand experience experiencing bioinformatics training, even as a trainer in Cameroon, was actually a great task for you. So
Exactly.
I really appreciate those inputs. I would love to call on someone in the field before I call on Risi, so that she can share our experience at Kenya, Babylon, experience with us, how she got involved in bioinformatics and how she was able to cross over. But before I call on Risi, I would love to call on Dr. Shonibare. Dr. Shonibare, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, so the quick question I would love to ask is still related with this. And the question is, what do you think is actually the obstacle that is actually preventing the public health sector, for example, in West Africa, using Nigeria as an example? What do you think is actually hindering them from really engaging molecular research and molecular diagnostics that will actually bring into use the expertise of bioinformatics knowledge?
Yes, like you said, I'm a clinician. I'm a medical microbiologist, and I want to look at discussing with OmicsLogic about health research, and diagnostics and in treatment. So I just recently got introduced to OmicsLogic about 3 to 6 months back, and I've been following. And like I will want you to know that in my country, Nigeria, we're actually into molecular, research. A lot of centers now have molecular laboratories, But we are very, like you said, we are at the very baby phase of bioinformatics. A lot of centers have not keyed into bioinformatics, and my center is service oriented. Be that as it may, that it also enjoys research in diseases and diagnostics. We don't mind, but a lot of hindrances, a lot of encumbrances are there in my country right now. You know that most of training institutions, most of our education institutions are home. They have been on strike for the past 7 months, and it's only those institutions that are not public that are running. And then because of the challenges, which is global, the economic meltdown and everything, going into researches, especially molecular training, molecular research, is seriously challenging. Although it is not undaunting, it's not something that cannot be surmounted. And I believe that, like the first speaker from Cameroon said, Africa is in the teething phase. Africa is learning. And I'm sure that Nigeria will also catch up quickly, because as I've been following the presentation this morning, I've been hearing people from Osun State, the Osun State University. I've been hearing other people who have logged on to the OmicsLogic platform and are already doing well at catching up. I heard the first speaker talk about what they do, you understand? And then the training that they've been giving people, even spreading far back as Cameroon, spreading back to neighboring nations in Nigeria. So I know I can see a future for Nigeria with OmicsLogic and bioinformatics. So that's what I have to say for now.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much. We can actually draw a summary that that even if the government isn't actually helping to push this to work, people are still engaging the knowledge, which is actually a very, very good one. So I'm going to call on Risi at this point to actually share with us. So Risi, from a first-hand experience, I understand that you actually had some intra-African education. What is actually the gap between, in molecular studies, bioinformatics studies, between Kenya and Zimbabwe, and what has the experience been so far for you?
Okay, sir, thank you so much for the opportunity. So my introduction to the field of bioinformatics actually started in Kenya. My background is in biochemistry and molecular biology. So I had my internship at the Kenya Medical Research Institute. And at that point, my boss at the time had some projects that required a bit of genomics and bioinformatics knowledge. And by virtue of that, he organized a lot of knowledge transfer seminars whereby you would have people coming to teach us different things. So back then, I wasn't confident enough that I understood bioinformatics as such, because when you said bioinformatics, you'd have to be in places like ILRI, where they offer bioinformatics-based internship, or you would have to be in the ENBIT program, because it's one of the major programs that offers bioinformatics training in Africa. And with these few centers, it means that you needed to know someone with knowledge in terms of bioinformatics, or who knows a sort of training, a sort of institute that is offering that kind of training for you to be able to be exposed to this kind of knowledge. Transitioning into my master's, I'm currently doing my master's in genomics and precision medicine at the African Institute of Biomedical Science and Technology in Zimbabwe. So ABST as an institute, they have a bioinformatics and genomics cohort, and they are also part of one of the nodes for the H3 Bionet program. So transitioning from Kenya to ABST, despite my program being genomics, you cannot afford to ignore bioinformatics, because I think where we are going in the life science field, knowledge in bioinformatics is very, very crucial. So part of my course here at ABST is in bioinformatics. I had to do a module in bioinformatics. So that was like in class sessions. And then in addition to that, we also had to take up some other online classes in FutureLearn, where they do like bioinformatics training for biologists, because you need to merge both into one. And then being a node for H3 Bionet, I am actually a beneficiary of most of the trainings at H3 Bionet, and it has been a continuous process because the more you learn, the more you're curious, you want to know more, and that's how I ended up at the OmicsLogic Research Symposium. Like I've been attending a lot of bioinformatics research symposium because I want to be familiar with the kind of research that is currently going on, and through this, the gap has been that there's no systematic training in that you need to start with this part and move to this part. So it just happens that in your journey as a student, when there's need for bioinformatics training, that is when it comes up. But I don't really think it should be an excuse because with getting knowledge from bits of bits, I came to grow up to a position whereby currently by attending what we call codathons, whereby you meet and you're grouped into different kind of groups, then you get to run a project. One such program is by the African Society for Bioinformatics and Computational Biology. So I joined it last year in October. I was a participant then, but then based on how they were running things, I decided to pitch a project which I'm currently leading. It's called the GNBase Explore project, whereby we are trying to explore the feasibility of using genomic skills bioinformatics in newborn screening. So I would say that it is really an uphill task for a student in Africa, but you still need to understand like what is driving you and be able to connect with the right people who know the right resources that you need to continue building your career, because most of this knowledge is in informal setting unless you actually enroll as a bioinformatics student full-time. You shouldn't like limit yourself to say that since I'm not training in bioinformatics, I don't want to get that kind of knowledge. So that is the gap I would say is the in brief.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I actually love those summations that you actually brought because they're actually actual for a lot of persons. And how actual are they? For some persons, they're looking at having a systematic way of learning, but it may not actually come to them like that. Some other persons actually need to do bioinformatics at a particular time of research, and they have to catch up with the reality of what bioinformatics is. And the accessibility of trainers and so on were things that you subtly mentioned over there, and that will actually take me to the next question. I hope to call on Mr. Dekunle after I throw this question to a lecturer that is over here. And the question is, today, majority of bioinformatics teaching is at postgraduate level, and student tends to enroll in these programs from different backgrounds and terms of formal training received. In terms of formal training received. And these trainings, both the lecturers and the student, they actually have to face their own challenge of catching up with the know-how. So the question is, Dr. Francis, the question is to you. What do you think is the biggest challenge of owning bioinformatics skills for trainers and for students and those in the field and those that are actually working? Yeah, so that's the question.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bitetutu, for the question. That's a very, very tricky question because the problem is there. And I think we all know the problem. We all know the problem. Bioinformatics is practical. Bioinformatics is practical. And most of the time, those getting involved into bioinformatics have never practiced bioinformatics. And I said initially, they are from various backgrounds. They don't know what is decoding. They don't know what is programming. They finish with their undergraduate level. They reach the graduate and the postgraduate level, and they generate data, and they want to analyze the data. So definitely, bringing together those individuals from various backgrounds into the same discipline, which is bioinformatics, is a very, very difficult. As a lecturer, imagine that I start teaching bioinformatics at the postgraduate level. Means that someone who started his undergraduate in biology, in biochemistry, in mathematics, has never joined those skills together to make the discipline of bioinformatics as he will start at the postgraduate level. So for you or for me as a lecturer is already a great, great challenge. And this brings in the question of what or how is our national education policy being established? Because a new discipline like a bioinformatics, to get involved, this policy had to develop global guidelines to establish new bioinformatics degree program at different institutions for us to ascertain that those getting involved into the bioinformatics disciplines for the practical session or at the practical level, which is generally the postgraduate, when they generated their own data, they already have a very good background to get involved into the discipline and to master easily what they will be taught. I will take an example of one of my lecturers from Kenya, from Erie. He told me that he started decoding at the age of 10. He started decoding at the age of 10. And me, when I started with I started getting involved with bioinformatics, I was already 30. And I want to master the skill he's using to analyze the biological data that I generated during my PhD. Imagine the difficulty, imagine the challenge. The guy was just playing with the code. The guy was just playing with the programs. And when you are looking at him, it's like he's coming from a new planet, a different planet, which unfortunately is not really easy to accept. But definitely it's a real situation, it's a true situation because of that system, which unfortunately did not allow us to start or to grow up by getting familiar with those basic background. And bioinformatics today is something that, as a biologist, you can't move without it. If you are dealing with biological data, if you are generating data, you need bioinformatics to analyze those data. So at this step, I think we just need to bring it our government, to bring it our policy, to interpret them, for them to understand the needs of this new field of study, to allow those interested to start at the basic background level, to get familiar with the discipline in order to become the good bioinformaticians that we need as trainer of the new generation. Because today, I started in biochemistry, I continue with molecular biology, and I'm getting familiar with bioinformatics. Definitely, my background or my skills, my experience will never be the same as the one of my instructor who started at the age of 10. So this is one of the aspects that I think we have to bring in, and that has to be considered by our policy.
Yeah, thank you so much for that submission. It's actually very actual. Yeah, because our realities in Africa isn't the same realities with other places. And now that you mentioned about one of your instructors that started coding at the age of 9. I remembered working in an academy where I had to go join some basic Python class over a year. Even though I was a teacher in that academy, I had to go join secondary school. I mean, from 8 students, I learned some of those coding, and I actually didn't experience it a lot until I was already my postgraduate. So that's actually a bridge. Yeah. So I will be throwing a similar question.
Yeah, even maybe I face some. Before we move in, another challenge is the method of teaching. You know, most of us get involved into bioinformatics during workshops or maybe during short-term internship. And most of the time, those workshops and internships are being carried out abroad. And we do it for a very short period of time. And when we come back, the facility we were getting there are no more available in our institutions. And definitely this also impacts our training experience and also our long-term training capacity. So definitely, this is also something that has to be addressed. If I'm getting trained, how long? What sustainable measure is putting in place to ascertain that as soon as I'm starting, my training will get continued till I acquire the best experience that I need. So thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, because it's actually there's power in continuity, like Risi actually shared. So I would be throwing almost the same question to Risi, but I will be putting it in a different way, because Doctor just said that there is a systematic way of teaching about informatics. So let me ask you, Risi, have you recently joined? Joined a training program, and you were actually stuck in the process of training. What part of bioinformatics training seems hard for you? Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much for that question. So indeed, majority of the trainings that I have joined are usually at the basic introductory level. But then when I started working on this particular project, the genomics screening, I tried to join different training that now, you've been learning these skill sets, but you need to apply them. So at the application phase is when you actually realize, oh, so they used to say we call for variants, but I can't actually call for variants. Like, how do I go about it? So you usually get stuck when it's now time to actually apply the skill sets that you have gotten. So the training might be nice, structured, well structured, you are following it, but if you don't have actual data to actually apply the skill set that you have learned, then it becomes a problem.
So what you're trying to say is that, okay, sometimes we have the right access to these things, but we still need some hands-on practicals that
Yes.
that we can do by ourselves. So that's actually the application phase of the training. So the application phase of the training, many a times people get stuck, not just about the coding now, but about they already have access to the database. To the database and to the data they actually need. But at the same time, it's actually getting stuck. They actually get stuck in the process. Wow, this is actually true and real. And I know some questions are actually boiling in the minds of some persons. I want you to start to write your questions down so that we can start to answer it. Before we round up this session, I would love to call on on our consultant doctor to ask him. Hello, Dr. Shonibari, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, lovely to still have you here with us. The question I want to ask from you is to understand what is actually the bottleneck really affecting professionals in the field from accessing bioinformatics knowledge from your own perspective. What do you think is actually the bottleneck that actually affects professionals, maybe genetic counselors, maybe clinical microbiologists and co, and these other professionals that we have on the field? What do you think is actually the bottleneck that's actually stopping them from actually getting access to this information?
Thank you very much. The major challenge is in the curriculum of training. You know, everything is dynamic. Now, bioinformatics has come in. I can tell you that when we started training, there were no molecular techniques, in medicine. And then gradually molecular techniques came in, and then we were drafted into doing molecular, researches. Although this has been far in other climes, but it gradually got into our system. And a lot of us in our training got involved in molecular techniques, molecular analysis of our, our samples, molecular techniques in diagnostics and things like that. And then we gradually get started imbibing it. And then molecular techniques cropped into our practice. A lot of our practice now, we use molecular techniques in diagnostics and things like that. And so bioinformatics will gradually get in when it gets integrated into the training. The next crop of professionals, as they come in, as they are trained, if the Nigerian government and the educational institution gradually put in bioinformatics into our regular institutions, so that these things are readily available and people get into it as they are trained. So as the training comes up, they get into bioinformatics and get to know that this is a useful tool in diagnostic and research. And it gradually creep into our system and creep into our practice. I am looking forward to a kind of cooperation among researchers, so that those of us who are in the field, who are clinicians, will be able to, our diagnostics will be better. We'll have people we can rely on to talk to, say, okay, you can make my diagnosis better. Right now, we do a lot of molecular diagnosis. We want to go into bioinformatics too, since it's a new area of, research and diagnostics. We want to collaborate. We want to join people to do this. So the bottleneck is that for now, bioinformatics is relatively new in our environment. A lot of people have not caught up with it. By the time the research institutions started catching up with it, by the time the training institutions start catching up with it, by the time the postgraduate medical colleges catch up with bioinformatics as part of diagnostics, a lot of doctors, a lot of professionals, a lot of physicians like me who are research oriented would go into that. And a lot of the research centers in Nigeria would also, when we get into bioinformatics, when these things get into our training, into our curriculum, into our practice, we'll gradually. So what I'm looking forward to as part of this workshop, this OmicsLogic workshop, is a further introduction, a further foray into our institutions, so that a lot of us can, get introduced to this and get involved in it.
Thank you so much for that. And that's actually very, 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 very true. In recent times, I actually traversed Nigeria this year, meeting with heads of department and major stakeholders in the different faculties. And I was so surprised that bioinformatics wasn't on the syllabus, even for the common biomedical students. So it's actually something that is actually very, very important, that even the medical schools, the medical students, the biomedical students will actually start to engage bioinformatics. Okay, so at this point, I would love to call on Mr. Adekunle. Mr. Adekunle, are you there? Hello, Mr. Adekunle, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, so the quick question I would love to share with you is, you have actually in recent time you have actually engaged training individuals in the field of bioinformatics. And the question is, what do you think are actually the challenge to why the trainers, the students, and the lecturers, what do you think are actually the hindrance to these people opening up to bioinformatics training in Africa? Because they need to actually open up to it before they can actually get the training. So that's the question, sir.
All right, thank you for that question. I would say that, like the speakers that have spoken earlier on have said, there are a number of challenges when it comes to Africa also catching up with the speed of and its use in omics sciences generally. But nonetheless, we have seen from Africa that, particularly here in Nigeria, that more and more people are getting interested in learning these skills. All right. Howbeit, some of the challenges we have noticed from our works, in recent past, ranges from, issue of economic power to be able to access this training, to access these, these courses, these programs, also to some of the technical challenges that participants have during these programs. All right. You will agree with me. Most of we conduct most of our studies, our programs, researches. We do them online, and we've seen situations where participants begins to complain about even good internet accessibility. Okay, and this quite a huge challenge. Equally, most of these programs come at a cost, and because of the economic power also, a number of persons get to complain. They have the desires to join these programs, but then they have no choice but to drop back at some point. And that's why we've seen more and more people join our free webinars and maybe workshops. Some of the workshops are sponsored under the Biotech scholarship, all right, and then to get the follow-on build-up training, because what we do with OmicsLogic is a pedagogical training, building up the skills from the very basis. Okay, so you see them drop away from such follow-on trainings. But of course, I want to sincerely acknowledge here, what OmicsLogic is doing here in Africa, particularly the support of the Biotech International Office, to ensure that the cost of these trainings is made available with a lot of partial scholarships and the rest for participants from Africa. All right, that's quite very, very helpful. But nonetheless, these are some of the challenges. We will talk about the technical aspects, talking about the internet. I've seen people even on some of our workshop programs complaining that their internet is not strong enough. Not necessarily that they are complaining their internet is not strong enough, but you find them having difficulties accessing some of those pipelines and platforms. And you get to let them know that it's about their internet network. They have to change locations, change their source of connectivity. And we've seen that get resolved, and then they move on. Then lastly, that I'd like to mention is, bioinformatics also comes with, a bit, I wouldn't say a bit, a good knowledge of coding skills, okay? And then we have seen that, particularly because they're getting introduced, yes, many of them, like Dr. Sunibari mentioned earlier on, while in school, they were never introduced even to molecular techniques, let alone bioinformatics, okay? And so while going through these programs, they're getting to see new concepts and learn new things. And especially when we now get to the coding aspect, a lot of them get lost and get discouraged. But that is why also I want to acknowledge what we are doing with the OmicsLogic platform, the learn.OmicsLogic platform, because participants can get to, get introduced to these new feeds, these new concepts, starting from the bytes and molecules, the basis, and then they build on that skill set. So with tenacity, definitely we've seen people move from that very basis, being a novice with bioinformatics and moving on to become an expert and even conducting their own researches now currently in their research fellowship. So these are a plethora of challenges we've been having, but thankfully we are trying to bridge this gap with our set of programs. and it is our hope that we can contribute to this until we have most of our institutions partnering with programs like ours, and or reviewing the curriculum to accommodate these changes. So I think until we get to that stage, we'll keep making the progress as it's maybe in bits and pieces.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for that. It has actually been very, very enlightening from this part, because bioinformatics actually has and promises a lot, and this section has actually opened our minds and our eyes to actually see the challenge. I would love to give us all the ability, a closing, a privilege to actually share a closing remark on one thing you think will fix bioinformatics training in Africa. So just round up, give us a closing sentence about one thing you think we fix bioinformatics training in Africa. So I would love to call on Risi.
Okay, thank you so much for the opportunity. So from my part as a student and having experienced bioinformatics in Africa, I would say we need to start small, maybe reach them when they're young, don't just train at postgraduate level. Can we try from high school level, keep telling them there's this thing called bioinformatics, keep introducing them to coding. And also, the way I have understood it is you don't need to be in bioinformatics, a bioinformatician to learn bioinformatics, because even in the life science field, you'll have to apply bioinformatics. So if we encourage more people, more students, you don't need to be really, once they understand that you don't really need to be a bioinformatician to get the bioinformatics skills, then I think more people will be open to learning. And then if you like it, then you can go on ahead and do it full time. So that would be my parting remarks, let's get them young and let's encourage them to keep learning.
Thank you so much. Get them young, encourage them to keep learning. They just take it to our primary school and secondary schools. Yeah, I love that. Okay, over to you, Dr. Francis.
Yeah, so I think one of the most important thing is that in addition to current bioinformatics training capacity building environments, like the H3A Bionets, like OmicsLogic, like the ERI, we need additional flexible, sustainable, and high-quality bioinformatics training environment. And I think that filling this gap will help us to ensure that the biological data derived of sample generated in Africa will finally be analyzed only by African bioinformaticians.
Wow, that's actually very, very powerful. No one will actually care for our Africa like we do. So we actually need to become the expert that we need to be able to solve the problem that we have. Thank you so much for that. That's so short and very, very, very powerful. Okay, I would love to call on Dr. Shonibare if he's still with us. Dr. Shonibare, are you there? Hello, Dr. Shonibare, are you there? Okay, so we'll give the final word to Mr. Adekunle Adeluwoye. Just give us a closing sentence, on how to go on with this.
Okay, please. Can you please repeat that?
Yeah. So the question is, can you give us a last advice or a last take home to the solution that you think we need in our bioinformatics training in Africa? Just a closing sentence.
All right, thank you very much. I think personally we need to begin to engage more and more the policymakers, the educational policymakers, in this continent about bioinformatics and the need to integrate this into the curriculum. I want to believe so much that we can actually scale the accessibility and the use of bioinformatics in our educational space with that. Of course, most of our engagement personally as a group, as a team here, had been much with the universities individually, and it has been quite a welcoming one. So I think at this point, with the various programs out there, H3 Bionet and the rest, OmicsLogic, we might need to also begin to engage policymakers and ministries of education to let them see the need to actually take on bioinformatics actively into our high institutions. That would be that from my end. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. It has actually been a teachable moment for a lot of us, because a lot of persons have actually been thinking, how do I cross from this page to this page? How do I actually face this challenge, and how do I overcome this? The truth is that it is not new. We actually have to cross and jump over our own way, to build our own ladder our own way. And exactly, like we've heard from the persons on the field, that we need bioinformatics in our medical schools, we need it everywhere. We need it for the biomedicals and for the sciences, for every aspect of what we do. We need a curriculum that is changing, and we need you to actually be the change. You need to take it to the schools and so on. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining us. I would love to call on Dr. Adekunle for him to continue, because we have the representative of Prof on the ground now.